Welcome to the Chattanooga Depression Care Collective member interview series. I'm Regina Gee from Wellspring, and my world is all about rebuilding after depression. And I'm here today with Sarah Leverett from Intuitive Empowerment. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to learn more about who you are, the work you do, and how it helps with depression.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here as well. I feel like I remember when you just had a seed of this idea, and so now seeing it in bloom and being a part of it, it's very exciting. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and also Camy, thank you for being here. The cat is Camy.
Yes, this is Camy, and we are recording this Halloween week, so I feel like she thinks this is her moment to shine, which I don't blame her.
Oh, it's very topical.
Mhm.
Tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so again, my name is Sarah Leverett. I am here in Chattanooga. I've been here for going on a few years now. And I have a business here called Intuitive Empowerment. And really, the two things that I do is guide self-exploration and then facilitate community care. And then there are many ways that I do that. I'd say that my main modality is hypnosis. So I'm trained as a hypnotist, but I'm also an intuitive. So I do readings and then a mentor as well. My background is in the world of education and the nonprofit sectors. So I bring that educator part of me into the work that I do. I'm always teaching, facilitating, hosting classes and events of all sorts. So, yeah, outside of work, I am a Celtic Pagan witch. So I'm walking the path of my ancestors and specifically rooted in the Irish tradition and Irish mythology. So you'll absolutely see that magic of Mother Nature in all of the work that I do as well.
So facilitating self-exploration and guiding community care.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us more about what you mean by self-exploration.
Yeah, just taking time in the very external world that we live in to slow down, turn inward, um, do work that explores things like intuition and empathy and what I call shadow work. Um, yeah, so it's all about that journey of turning inward and that question that we all kind of chew on of who am I? Um, and just being there as someone who can walk alongside you on that journey of asking that question.
Mm. Having a companion to help you answer, who am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, that introspection. And what do you mean by community care?
Yeah, for the first leg of my journey with intuitive empowerment, it was so focused on that internal piece that we just chatted about, and I was realizing more and more how isolated we all are as a society and how far we've gotten away from community in its simplest, truest form. And so, yeah, I realized how important it is to not just ask that question of who am I, but who are we, and who are we together. And yeah, I would say, that journey back to my roots and that journey back to incorporating the magic of Mother Nature really helped me embody this idea of the we. And so, yeah, getting spaces created that foster belonging and connection, and just realizing that we all walk around with this weight of feeling like we're the only ones going through something, and then getting in these spaces where we realize actually we're all going through it together. And so then the question becomes, how do we support each other? How do we show up for each other? How do we hold space for each other? And so really that has become one of my favorite parts of the work that I do, is that community building element.
Yeah. Parker Palmer talks about how the question of who am I and whose am I are connected questions. Like you can't answer one without also exploring the other.
Ooh, say that second question again. Whose am I?
Yeah.
Like,
Whose am I?
who I belong to?
Yeah. What community is
Mm.
mine? Where do I belong? And I think it's really cool that your business in practice is evolving to like hold both of those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Do you want to tell us more about how it helps specifically with depression and then give us specific examples of the work, or do you want to do invert those?
I can give you specific examples of the work that I do. And really in those, I think I have like four buckets. Um, so the first bucket would be that hypnosis work. So when I approach hypnosis, I'm really taking a transpersonal approach. That's the way that am trained here. So yes, that like mental side of things, yes, the body side of things and the emotional side of things, but then the spiritual as well. So I take that holistic approach. I have a few different ways that I work with hypnosis, one being within that shadow work space. So really looking at inner child healing, exploring memory, doing reframing, reparenting, and really just carving out time to look at the things in our subconscious and our unconscious and just illuminate them with compassion and grace and this sense of wholeness. Um, and then to speak more to that transpersonal side of things, I am also trained as a past life regressionist. So I call that accessing soul memories. So I can facilitate sessions like that. And then on more of the intuitive sides of things, I really love the idea of using hypnosis as a way into journeying into the other world and connecting to the spiritual parts of us as well.
What's a common hang up people have about like doing hypnosis with you?
Um, There's a few actually that come to mind. One being is that they can't be hypnotized, right? That their mind will be too busy or they're too distracted or they have a really hard time, shutting off that like critical part of their brain and they think they can't do it, which just isn't the case. If we were all good at that, then we wouldn't need something like hypnosis. Hypnosis is a practice and it's the journey of working with that part of the mind and creating space for the symbolic and the metaphorical and the things that we can find in stillness as well. So anyone who wants to be can be hypnotized. And then a secondary fear, I think, just comes from a misunderstanding of what it is. People think that there's a loss of control or a loss of awareness, or that somehow the hypnotist is doing something to you outside of your sovereignty, and that's also not the case. You have to be completely consenting and open for it to work, and there's nothing um, that I could do in that space that would um, there's nothing I would do in that space that would challenge someone's autonomy or sense of being in the driver's seat with the session.
So in order for the hypnosis to work for you, you just have like you get to consent to it and then you get to show up for it. And it's not about anything that you're forcing or doing or like manipulating. It's just that holding space piece.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, the hypnosis bucket had the inner child work, reparenting, past life regressions. And then you said there were three other buckets.
Yeah, I'm carrying a lot of buckets over here. The next one would be like in that intuitive reading space. So I'm a tarot reader. I love working with archetypes and symbology and the more metaphorical. My background is in English literature within education, and so tarot is just like so when it comes to the symbolic and the archetypal. So tarot reading and then also human design readings. So that's one bucket. And then the mentorship bucket. I, yeah, I love working one-on-one with people who are in that self-exploration space that we talked about. I love working with people one-on-one in a mentorship capacity who are developing their intuition, working with their empathy, trying to implement boundaries, whether that's energetic, emotional, physical, spiritual. And this is a budding piece of mentorship that I'm really, really enjoying. now that I feel more integrated and embodied in this sense of being a witch and being on this Celtic pagan path, I'm finding a lot of joy mentoring um, people exploring witchcraft, people exploring Irish mythology, or just more broadly Celtic mythology, and helping kind of take that from a concept into a practice.
Mm.
Yeah, and then that final bucket is the events space. So classes, workshops, retreats, rituals. I'm all over Chattanooga doing pop-up events, reading tarot at different markets, hosting group hypnosis or group readings. So really all types of events and workshops and yeah, gatherings.
What do you want people to know about how your work helps with depression?
Yeah, I appreciate this question. I appreciate this space to really sit with it. And there are a few things that come to mind. One, I'm on your directory specifically as a hypnotherapist, so I want to kind of address that. I think a lot of times um, we know we're depressed, um, and we have a sense that there's something underneath the surface with it that we can't quite see or understand yet. And so I think hypnosis is a really beautiful, safe, gentle, compassionate way into getting into the root of something. And so I love creating space for folks to look at patterns, look at emotional responses, and then ask that question like, what's underneath this? What is the root of it? Um, so that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Stay with this for a second, because depression is that veil that it gets wrapped around us, the gauze, and it's hard to get past that or see what's below it. And I love this idea of getting to look at that niggling sense of like, hey, what's here without the poking and prodding of like, what's wrong with you? Or like, why is this like this? Just that, what you said, gentle. I think that's a super key word here.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been in a lot of clinical spaces that don't feel gentle and compassionate. And so I think this is a great supplement or alternative way into approaching it in a softer sense.
It's approaching it with a softer sense. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Um, yeah, and then I think the other important thing I want to reiterate is that community care piece, right? Because when we're in that depression pit, as you call it, which I love, it really feels like we're in there alone. And so the more spaces that I can create and facilitate that reminds us that we're in this together, and the only way out is through it together. I think that really, really helps. It helps me, even as the facilitator of these spaces. It helps me remember that. So I'm right there with the folks that I create these spaces for. Um, and then something's occurring to me, like showing up as the facilitator with that mindset, I think is so important, that I'm not somehow like above the community care. Or I think a lot of times people look at facilitators, teachers, guides, therapists of all sorts as like somehow having it figured out or fixed or under control or whatever it may be. And I love just showing up in my humanness. I love showing up in my wholeness and my complexities. And, I let folks know on my days where I am depressed that I'm depressed. And if I, have an emotion I want to release, I do my best to not mask that and to show up in these spaces in that way. So I think that's important.
So I'm hearing approaching it gently and softly, showing it like holding it in community and the whole humanness and not this like hierarchical, like expert student, like I know things you don't learn. It's like, no, we're all human. We're all in this together.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then the third piece, I think I want to take that idea of wholeness and pan out to a bird's eye view. I think as a witch and, working with the magic and grounding in the magic of Mother Nature, we can see that wholeness around us, in nature, and the fact that we are innately nature ourselves, and that we show up as cyclical beings, and we can look at every sunrise as a fresh start in our bodies. We can look at every sunset as a sense of closure in our bodies. We can look outside our window and see the changing of seasons and allow ourselves to change. And, at the group workshop I was just in with you, this idea of like wintering came up, right? So when we're looking outside and we're realizing, nature is wintering, nature is hibernating, we can cut ourselves some, grace and compassion, and allow ourselves to winter. And that sense of connection spiritually to nature, I think, is another element here of helping with depression. When we can really embody nature and really remember that we're not separate at all from that whole.
Thank you for bringing up wintering, because it's like winter isn't wrong. It just is. And like we're creatures in this creation, right? And so just, okay, here we are. What are we experiencing? What season is this? How can I settle into this season rather than dismiss it or pretend I'm or hope that I'm not in it? Yeah. Okay. You have so many different tools that can help with depression. And thank you specifically for talking about the hypnotherapy piece. I'm curious if you have any insights about like the intuitive empowerment and depression, and then also like the tarot and depression.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of times with depression, it's that sense of like disconnection from ourselves. And so I think empowering our intuition brings us back to ourselves. And a lot of times, folks that I meet and work with, they know that they're intuitive. Like they know that they're tapped in. They know that they have strong gut feelings. They know that they can tap into the more symbolic and metaphorical, but there's that disconnect between knowing it and like trusting it. Like that awareness may be there, right? I come across a lot of self-aware folks, but then it takes self-exploration to move the needle towards trusting it. So I think the more we trust ourselves, generally, the more we trust ourselves in the depression pit as well, and the more that we remember that our intuition will guide us through the pit and back up again, and kind of trusting that cyclical nature.
I love the idea that depression is here to teach us something about self-trust. It's like,
Mm.
okay, what's happening here? And
And then
the,
you asked about tarot.
yeah, oh, but one thing, the intuition being able to lead you through the pit, like up and out. Oh, yes, very good. And then, yeah, what can tarot tell us or teach us with our depression?
I think of tarot as a mirror. I think that's my favorite way of relating tarot or explaining tarot. It's like, and that comes back to intuition, that we already know inside of us what we're experiencing, what we're feeling, what's true for us, what's not true for us. And so tarot is this mirror, right, that we can look at and see ourselves reflected back and get curious about it, and name it and explore it from that angle. And so sometimes maybe we're like at the beginning of a downward spiral, or maybe we're trying to distract ourselves from being in the pit, or we're not wanting to really see it or hold it or name it or feel it. I think tarot gives us an opportunity to like slow down, take a deep breath, see ourselves in the mirror, and maybe just in that sense of like acknowledging it, naming it, um, maybe we find some relief in that.
Hmm. The mirror, the relief we find in the mirror.
Mm. Hmm.
Do you want to talk at all about why you do what you do?
Yeah. That's there's a really big answer to that. And so let me, so I was on a trajectory of, you know, hyper independence, um, overly productive, uh, accomplishment oriented, checking off boxes, autopilot kind of lifestyle. And in 2016, I had a partner at the time who passed away very suddenly, very unexpectedly, very traumatically, very tragically. And so when I think about why I do what I do, loving him and grieving him is at the heart of of it. Um, and so it never feels right to acknowledge my work without acknowledging him. Um, and then I found a way back to myself, right? If that's the trajectory that I was on, I found a way back to just being and not just giving, but also receiving. Um, and I found a way back to being able to empower my intuition and my empathy. I found the courage to, decondition and, really illuminate the shadowy aspects of myself. I found a way back to my ancestors. I found a way back to my roots. Um, I can very proudly stand here, sit here, and claim like I am a witch, and that feels beautiful to me. And I think that educator part of me, the drive that I have to learn and then share, I think that that's probably the other driving factor here. It's like I've learned all of this along the way. How can I share it? Um, yeah, those are the things that come to mind right now in this moment today.
I want to acknowledge how the first time you said I found my way back, a little reflection of light flitted across your face, like from the window. And I was like, that's not just exactly right. I don't know what is.
I love that. And I don't know if you could hear this, but around that time, my doorbell also like dinged, and it felt like a light bulb above me going ding.
Yeah, it very much had that sense to it. So thank you for doing this kind of work. How can people find you and work with you?
Yeah, so my website is intuitiveempowerment.net. My Instagram is at intuitive.empowerment. Um, and in both of those places, you can also find my email address. You can always reach out directly in direct messages. And then I also want to share my Substack because I feel myself migrating there. So my Substack is intuitiveempowerment.substack.com.
Thank you. And do people kind of dip their toes in with the community classes and the group workshops and like the intuition circles before diving into more like hypnotic journeys and things?
I think that is a natural progression. I think I also have a wide variety of folks that find me. Some people already know exactly what hypnosis is and they're looking specifically for that. But yeah, I would say like my community events are a great entry point into the work that I do. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want people to know right now? I know there's a lot. The educator in you is like, I want people to know everything.
All the things. Mainly what's on my heart right now is just acknowledging the shadow of the collective, right? Like acknowledging the collective darkness that we are seeing on the surface. And just really, really wanting folks to be extra, extra gentle and compassionate with themselves and each other um, while we are doing our best collectively to move through a lot of societal and cultural um, shadow.
Thank you for being somebody who's not scared of the dark.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for seeing that in me. Thank you.
Yeah. I see you. I see you. Well, thank you so much and ta-da!